So Loki, Norse god of mischief.
Yes.
It's sort of, there's very little evidence that he was actually worshipped. There's no shrines to Loki. There's no sort
It's
of, with Thor, there's lots of these little hammers everywhere. Carved hammers,
yes.
metal, wood, whatever. And there's sort of evidence that he was worshipped and Odin was worshipped. But Loki, he was just kind of there, and I quite like that. Someone who, he's sort of technically a god, but doesn't have that many godlike attributes other than being very powerful. So yeah, Norse myth's fascinating, and I love the idea of taking someone from that mythic context and putting them into a very banal context like school.
Yes.
And it's partly because it's sort of, for me, the best stories are the ones where you make your character suffer the most. So what would be the most humiliating experience for the Norse god Loki? It'd probably be being an 11-year-old child and being forced to have parents and do what is told. So in the story, he's been punished for cutting off Sif's hair, Sif being Thor's wife, and the punishment is being sent down to Earth to school to learn how to be a better person.
Yes. And that's what I think, because I think being at school, when you have kids as well, but obviously we all were kids as well. What I like about this is it's the childhood experience. It's being kids sort of are gods really in their in their own words, in that they rule the roost at home, but also they don't really have much empathy, or they have to learn empathy, and they're very self-centered and confused by things. And as you say, it's confusing as a kid to go through those processes of making friends and losing friends and having arguments with friends, which is what this book's partly about, and how you navigate that. And so having this sort of protagonist who is this very selfish, very mischievous god figure, he still is very identifiable, I think, to a kid reader, as you could empathize with him, ironically, as that's his.
Yeah. Well, I think what you say about having to learn empathy, I'm not entirely convinced I learned empathy till I was about 25.
Right.
So I just look back on things I did and I was like, wow, I was not seeing this from the other person's point of view at all.
Sure.
And I think having a character who sort of is, I'm not going to say sociopath, but he's not great at the start. And so you started reading at book 4. He was even worse in book 1.
Right.
But so kind of having him sort of forced to learn what it means to be human and what it means to be good. I think that was an experience of childhood and kind of hurting people and not realizing why you're hurting them.
Yes.
And then having to learn that.
It is sort of fascinating watching your own kids grow up and sort of, see how naughty they are and how sometimes it's sort of beyond their control. And sometimes, when they're winding you up and you think all you have to do is just say sorry or back off. And then this all goes away. We don't really care. And yet my son will carry on in his flights of fancy, even when my wife is getting furious with him because it's time to get to school. So I really recognize that, your own kids in this. And he's, my son is a lovely boy, but he's a boy, so he's still doing things that he doesn't really comprehend as good or bad, just as the things he wants to do. So it really works on that level.
I feel like as a child you're kind of like you're id with very little ego,
yes.
And you're just kind of like you're testing your own power and seeing what you're capable of, and also testing what reactions you can get from adults, and the kind of the needling. I mean, I think I was a relatively well-behaved child, more or less.
Yeah.
And Loki is an opportunity to do all the things I wish I'd done. Like I didn't get massively into trouble at school or anything, but I had ideas of things I wanted to do.
Yes.
So it's that kind of the little naughty voice in the back of your head. I wanted to make that flesh,